have you with us on this Monday edition of Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Lots unfolding over the weekend. We'll get to all of it and what we're going to be looking at this week as we celebrate Thanksgiving in this country. We certainly have a lot to be thankful for. Can we be thankful for the fact that we continue to have this fear-mongering conversation that continues in America about what we're going to do with people that want to come to the country because they want to be safe? Refugees is what we're calling them. And we're having this fear-mongering conversation amongst governors, amongst the media, and amongst those who think that they can lead the country. First of all, we should point out one fact. 2,300 Syrians have come to the United States since 9/11, and there haven't been any problems because these people wanted to get out of a region and get safe, get to America, have the dream, live the dream. And this is exactly what George W. Bush was talking about back in 2001, 2002, and 2003. This was the view of Islam from the leading Republican in the country.
The face of terror is not the true faith of Islam. That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace. When it comes to the common rights and needs of men and women, there is no clash of civilizations. And we respect the faith, and we welcome people of all faiths in America. And we're not going to let the war on terror or terrorists cause us to change our values.
So we have gone from that mindset on the Christian right in this country and the Republican Party to a mindset that their leading candidate, Donald Trump, thinks that there should be a database. In fact, there are other candidates who are getting on board, and maybe they don't even know they're getting on board because they don't understand the questions. This was an interesting exchange on CNN with Jake Tapper and Governor Chris Christie about what he would do and what he's going to do about the 75 refugees that have settled in the state of New Jersey.
And what we need to do is to protect the homeland first, Jake.
I think the police actually...
There's no way for us to vet these folks.
But let me ask you, about 75 Syrian refugees have already settled in your home state of New Jersey since the start of the year, according to new data from the State Department. Should they be ousted from your state?
Jake, what should have happened is we should have been informed about it, and we were not. And this is part of the problem with this administration. They're an imperial administration that just decides they're going to place people in individual states and not even inform the state government of the fact that they've done it.
Well, there you have it. There you have Chris Christie. He's in favor of a database. He thinks that it's the government's fault that 75 people have settled in his state safely, I might add, and that he never knew about it. In fact, the only way he would know about it is if he was notified by the federal government that, hey, you got these special people coming into your state. You better be aware we got them in a database. Christie is struggling so bad in his career and his campaign right now, he would really say anything. He doesn't even know what he's saying. And the question that Jake Tapper posed was never answered. Does he think these people should be run out of New Jersey? He didn't answer that. So there's a lot of confusion going on right now on the Christian right and the right wing in this country when it comes to what are we going to do with people who want safe haven. They're refugees. Now, this is Donald Trump on the campaign trail. Good old Alabama can offer it up, can it? It must have motivated him to say we ought to be Nazi Germany. Here it is.
Database is okay, and watch list is okay, and surveillance is okay. If you don't mind, I want surveillance of these people that are coming in. I want surveillance of certain mosques, okay? If that's okay. I want surveillance. And you know what? We've had it before and we'll have it again.
Right out of the Heinrich Himmler playbook, isn't it? That's exactly what that is. We ought to be able to go anywhere we want to go as a government and intimidate anybody at any level and run them the hell out of the country. And he wants this at any level. The scary thing is that there are Americans who are buying into this garbage. There are Americans who don't know conflict that simply are going to be feared right down this road to take us away from who we are as a country. Now, the president in Malaysia over the weekend making this statement about really how the terrorists can get a one up on us and what their real strength is.
I am not afraid that ISIL will beat us because of their operations. When I see a headline that says this individual who designed this plot in Paris is a mastermind. He's not a mastermind. He found a few other vicious people, got hands on some fairly conventional weapons, and sadly, it turns out that if you're willing to die, you can kill a lot of people. They're a bunch of killers with good social media.
Well, it might be a little bit more than that, Mr. President, because the opposition in Washington is growing. The critics are out and about. Operationally, it's not being challenged the way it should be, according to some. This is former CIA Director Leon Panetta saying that we need to do more.
What we've learned a long time ago is if the United States does not lead, nobody else will. So the United States has to provide stronger leadership in trying to unify the forces that are there. Look, airstrikes are great. We're hitting some targets, but airstrikes alone are not going to win here. What ISIS has achieved is the ability to gain territory. And it's that territory, it's the caliphate, where they're designing their ability to kind of now do outreach and attack other countries. We've got to take that territory away from them. It's been a year. They're still in Mosul. They're still in Ramadi. They're still in Raqqa. Those are the areas we have to go after in order to be able to defeat ISIS ultimately.
And Leon Panetta, former defense secretary, is a Democrat who goes all the way back into the Clinton administration. So Democrats are stepping out as well. This is Senator Dianne Feinstein saying that she wants more action out of the administration.
I don't think the approach is sufficient to the job. I think there are general principles, and there are general principles in terms of the administration strategy, too. But I'm concerned that we don't have the time, and we don't have years. We need to be aggressive now, because ISIL is a quasi-state. ISIL has 30,000 fighters. It's got a civil infrastructure. It's got funding. It's spreading in other countries, and it's a big, big problem.
Well, it is, and it takes time to get people together. We were hit on September 11th, 2001. It wasn't until March of 2003 that we went into Iraq, and that was the wrong thing to do. But that's how long it took the Bush administration to get, quote, allies on board in an effort to go in to get Saddam Hussein. So should it be just an overnight operation by the Obama administration to put this whole thing together? It seems to me that we need to pay attention to what the United Nations is now saying. They voted on Friday unanimously to take action against Syria and Iraq. The French have got skin in the game now. So do the Russians. They're taking action. And now the Brits. Prime Minister David Cameron saying that Britain needs to come forward.
On Friday, the United Nations unanimously backed action against ISIL in Syria and Iraq. And later this week, I will set out in Parliament our comprehensive strategy for tackling ISIL. I firmly support the action that President Hollande has taken to strike ISIL in Syria, and it's my firm conviction that Britain should do so too.
This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. When we come back, Larry Cohen, the move by Bernie Sanders in the South. Is it too little too late? Can it turn? And also coming up, Black Lives Matter. Donald Trump is challenged on that. Dr. James Peterson will join us. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSafe team bring you this production. We're right back after this. Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com, www.biogreenclean, and order today. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSafe team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
The Ed Schultz Internet broadcast is brought to you by the Ring of Fire radio show. Listen to the Ring of Fire weekends on radio stations across the country. Get more information and the news of the day at ringofireradio.com.
And to political news on this Monday, Bernie Sanders continues to gain some momentum among non-white voters in this country. He has gone up 16% since October. Hillary Clinton has fallen 11%. That's in the latest polling. So how is this all going to unfold for Bernie Sanders? He did admit that if the election were held today, that he would lose. But this guy's a fighter, and he's also carrying the same message everywhere. In a church, a Baptist church in South Carolina yesterday, he talked about who he is and why he's running.
I am running for President of the United States because I believe that in our great country, we can do a lot better for working people and for poor people than we are currently doing.
Well, who can argue with that? It's a race against the calendar, as I see it right now, as we're closing in on Thanksgiving, just a couple of months to go before Iowa. And, of course, he has to build some momentum in the South. Let's turn now to Larry Cohen. He's a former president of Communication Workers of America. He's a surrogate, leading surrogate for the Bernie Sanders campaign. Larry, good to have you with us.
My pleasure.
I think it's a big shot in the arm for the Sanders campaign that former state senator Nina Turner, African-American, great advocate from Ohio, is backing Bernie Sanders and endorsed him and is working hard for him in South Carolina. How heavy a lift is this going to be for the Bernie Sanders campaign to make something happen in the South?
I think it's a lift, but I think it's a matter of getting his message to people. That, you know, we've had enough of corporate Democrats. It's not working in South Carolina, particularly for African Americans. But with that governor, you know, who doesn't tolerate people voting, let alone a campaign like Bernie Sanders. So I think it's a matter of getting the issues out and what he is. It's not just an older white guy from Vermont, but that he's a progressive challenger with a very different message about what corporate America has done for us and to us. So I think Nina is very important. I think she's really important in Ohio, which has an early primary as well on March 15th. So last week she introduced Bernie at Cleveland State University, her alma mater. Huge crowd, like 8,000 people there, and a very diverse crowd. So I think she makes a difference, as do the state senators in South Carolina who are African Americans who have endorsed him, and one of whom introduced him at one of the two churches yesterday.
How much ground do you think that the Sanders campaign can gain? What are the expectations in the next 60 days with minority voters in this country?
I think huge gains are going to continue to occur, not just among black voters, but also Latino. I think we're picking up ground fast in Nevada, which also matters, with an early primary, an early caucus. So I think the message is absolutely right, and I think we're going to see big surprises in Texas, where last weekend, not this one, but the past weekend, 900 people showed up in Dallas and Houston to volunteer. No Bernie there, no Bernie within 1,000 miles. And these are volunteers, and the crowd was totally diverse. They happened to, both meetings were at CWA local union halls, but it was not a union meeting. It was people who were volunteering from those two cities. So, I'm quite enthusiastic about what can be built here and how we can tie this progressive movement together.
What about the last debate, Larry, from scoring debate 1 to debate 2? How much better was it for Bernie Sanders?
Well, I think it was a lot better, particularly considering the CBS shift to talk about terrorism at the front end, which is a very emotional issue and doesn't particularly divide people one from another, except for Hillary Clinton's support for the Iraq War. But and that kind of approach, as if that's going to solve things. But the strength of this campaign is, we need to change America. Mm-hmm. Changing the rest of the world is a daunting task. But let's take control and let's take responsibility for our own country. And so I think he did great in the debate, except for the fact that you had to wait for 45 minutes to get to the issues that really divide them.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, let's turn now to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I see the mainstream media, in particular, the big website, the news website Politico, is now selling the Trans-Pacific Partnership, buying the administration's line that this is all about national security, which I think is absolute hogwash. The president on the other side of the globe last week making the case that obviously we need this trade deal. Where are we on that? And I want your take on how this plays into national security, which I think is a bunch of garbage.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, that's the line they use, including this president, disappointingly, to justify anything. The way he puts it is, if we don't do this, China will write the rules. Well, when I look at these rules, 2,000 pages of them, how much worse would China have done? Number one, the rules are all written for multinational corporations and to move our jobs and out of the country and put a damper on pay, because the pay comparisons will be with countries where workers don't make $1 an hour.
Yeah.
So, I think there's nothing in there for working people. And they use the security thing to paper that over, to appeal to patriotism as opposed to the economics that trade is supposed to be about.
It's the 11th hour in this deal, and nobody's really talking about it. And I see just this constant, every article that does come out about it certainly supports the administration. Labor just doesn't seem to be getting its side of the story told. And it's a clear Wall Street deal. Wall Street runs the mainstream media. There's no doubt about it. The corporate media wants this deal. The question is there going to be are there going to be enough votes in Congress to stop this deal? And what are the behind the scenes kind of work that's taking place right now that I know that you've been closely associated with?
Well, I think it takes a much bigger effort than what exists. It's a little bit complicated in terms of what is the real timeline for a vote in Congress. You have Orrin Hatch, who's the Republican leader on trade in the Senate, chair of the Finance Committee, say that there'll be no vote on this in 2016. I'm not sure that's really true. There's also the details of fast track and what does it mean in terms of timing, because when you read it like you and I would read it, the vote would have to be in early 2016. I do think lots more work is going to have to be done, particularly among Republicans, to stop it. Democrats alone won't stop it, and the corporate Democrats that voted for fast track are likely to vote for this again.
Okay. Larry Cohen, great to have you with us. All the best, my friend. We'll do it again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
You bet. When we come back on Ed Schultz News and Commentary, a former Marine who's now in the United States Congress doing battle on Twitter and doing battle in the media with the governor of Massachusetts over Syrian refugees. He has a very compelling story to tell. He'll do it next here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We're right back.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns.
It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor.
They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
Good to have you back with us on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. I guess I had no idea that we had so many experts on refugees and resettlement in this country as we do. The number of governors that is coming out in this country saying that they will not take Syrian or Iraqi refugees, I think is a bad mark on America. There's no question about it. And I also think they're showing their ignorance, and they're trying to wash their hands of a problem. This is President Obama talking about fear.
We do not succumb to fear. That's the primary power that these terrorists have over us. They cannot strike a mortal blow against the United States or against France or against a country like Malaysia. The most powerful tool we have to fight ISIL is to say that we're not afraid, to not elevate them, to somehow buy into their fantasy that they're doing something important.
So if all of these governors are against bringing in any refugees from Syria or Iraq, are they afraid, or do they just don't want the responsibility, or they just politically oppose the president? We have experience in this country, in this area, firsthand experience. This is a fabulous story. Congressman Seth Moulton, who is a Democrat from Massachusetts, has been in somewhat of a public battle back and forth with Governor Charlie Baker, who has said that he does not want Syrian refugees in his state. The congressman is calling this un-American and immoral. He speaks from experience. He's a United States Marine with 4 tours of duty in Iraq. He also has experience with an Iraqi translator who became a target, ended up coming to the United States, and was getting help from this Marine. Congressman Moulton, good to have you with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary.
Good to be here, Ed. Thank you for having me.
I know that you didn't expect this story to unfold the way it did. I want your thoughts on the way this has played back and forth, and now the spotlight from unusual and unique experience on your part is starting to get traction and attention. Your thoughts on it?
Well, to be honest, I just spoke out for what I thought was the right policy, and I frankly wasn't even thinking about Mohammed when I first said that. I was thinking about our national security, thinking about the message that refusing to accept refugees sends to our enemies and to our friends abroad. And I was surprised by the response, including both the positive response from some corners, but also the incredibly vitriolic negative response. And one of the things people have been saying was, okay, Congressman, if you believe in this, why don't you accept the refugees? And that's when people realized that, in fact, I had taken in, my family took in my translator from Iraq when he needed refuge from insurgents and was seeking asylum here in America.
Congressman, tell us that story.
Well, to be honest, Mohammed came here on his own. I'd like to say that I helped him get here, but he was smart enough to earn a Fulbright scholarship to study in the United States with the full intention of returning back home. He had dreamed of being a professor in Baghdad at his old university. But he came here at a time when the civil war was reaching its peak in Iraq, and after he left, his family was persecuted for his role helping the American troops on the ground, for literally putting his life on the line, not just for his country, but for ours. So his family was visited by insurgents. They received death threats. They actually had to leave their home and change cities. And so Mohammed was here in America realizing that it would be a death sentence for him to go back to Iraq. And so he sought asylum. And when you seek asylum, you can't work. So for over the entire year plus that it took for his asylum application to be approved, he lived with my family home in Massachusetts.
Congressman Seth Moulton with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Did 4 tours of duty in Iraq, and once a Marine, always a Marine. He's got very unique experience and insight on all of this. The number has been reported, Congressman, that 2,300 refugees from Syria have come to the United States since 9/11. None of them have created a problem. None of them have been on any kind of terrorist watch list. What do you say to Charlie Baker, the governor of your state, Massachusetts, when that number comes up? And your thoughts on his position on this? He just doesn't want any refugees.
Well, he's moderated his position a bit since then, since we've had this discussion. And he refused to sign a Republican letter from other governors, formalizing their opposition to this. So I think that this debate is having some effect. But look, his initial reaction was that we should just shut down, taking refugees in, and that sends exactly the wrong message to the very people that ISIS is persecuting. I mean, these refugees are refugees because of ISIS. These are the people that ISIS is attacking. So America has always been a beacon of hope for people across the globe who are persecuted, and there are no more important people for that need to hear that message now than the very people that are the enemies of ISIS in Syria. ISIS is our enemy. ISIS is also the enemy of these Syrian refugees. And ISIS wins when they get us to change our values. ISIS wins when we stop taking in the very people that they are persecuting. We can't give any victory to ISIS, and I'm afraid that's what this policy of pausing or delaying the immigration of Syrian refugees does. Now, let me also add, our national security is critical. And if I felt that we had a very serious security risk with the vetting process, then I would be pushing for improving the vetting process. But right now it takes 18 to 24 months with numerous background checks and personal interviews, investigations into every Syrian refugee who wants to come here before he or she is even allowed into the country. So it's a totally different process than in Europe. In Europe, the refugees are essentially just walking across the borders. In the United States, it takes 18 to 24 months before a Syrian refugee is allowed to set foot in this country, and it's only after the most highly scrutinized vetting process, screening process for any traveler coming to the U.S. I'm confident that that process is as strong as can be. And I'll also add that the Republican bill doesn't do anything substantive to improve the screening. It hits pause, which sends exactly the wrong message, but it doesn't even accomplish anything other than adding a few layers of bureaucracy. It doesn't really improve the security of the process.
So given everything you just said, Congressman, do the Republicans have any merit in what they're saying, in their rhetoric? Is there any rhyme or reason, or is it simply based on fear and political posturing against this president?
Well, I think fundamentally it's based on fear, but their position is not unreasonable if you sort of look at this at the high level. I mean, we want to protect our national security. Sure. We've got to be safe. But when you get into it in any detail, when you recognize that this kind of bill is exactly what ISIS is trying to get us to do, to change our values, to not be the beacon of hope, to further the divide between Muslims and non-Muslims, both here at home and across the globe, then you realize that we're playing right into their hands. And I think it's also important to point out that ISIS is really using a different and new strategy compared to most traditional terrorist organizations. You know, Al-Qaeda, when they wanted to attack us on 9/11, they had the Saudis who they sent into America well in advance, and they had the sleeper cells, and they were training and everything else. ISIS does most of its recruitment over the Internet. ISIS is interested in inspiring fear and hatred and radicalizing folks right here at home. So, if they were even using refugee channels to send folks over to America, then this would be of greater concern. But that doesn't seem to be the strategy that they're using. If they have the choice between radicalizing someone already in America, someone like the Boston Marathon bombers who came here as children and were only radicalized as young adults, why would they choose to try to send someone through the strictest screening process for any traveler to the United States that takes almost 2 years, when they could simply radicalize someone over the Internet right here at home?
Congressman, I have to ask you, with your military experience, are we using the right strategy? Leon Panetta has come out and criticized it, says we need more activity in the game. Dianne Feinstein says that we don't have years to do this. Your thoughts? Are we doing the right thing strategically with the backdrop of the French, the Russians, and now the Brits talking about being militarily involved in all of this? Your thoughts? Where are we?
The short answer is we need to do a lot more. The short answer is that I think we've had a very short-term military-focused strategy that's been very much about just dropping some bombs and trying to kill some ISIS fighters without any long-term political or diplomatic vision for where this is going. And as someone who's fought on the ground in Iraq before, we can't send troops into combat without a clear mission. And we're not going to defeat ISIS without a clear plan for the political aftermath. You know, after all, ISIS didn't sweep in from Syria and take over large swaths of Iraq just by defeating the Iraqi army. The Iraqi army put their weapons down and went home because they had lost faith in their government. That tells us that the fundamental problem in Iraq and Syria today is a failure of politics. And you don't fix Iraqi politics just by training Iraqi troops.
Interesting. Congressman Seth Moulton, great to have you with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. I appreciate your time. Keep up the fight, my friend. Thank you.
Ed, thank you. Take care.
You bet. The voice of a decorated veteran here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Very few of them in the United States Congress. Congressman Seth Moulton speaking his piece here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. When we come back, Donald Trump and Black Lives Matter and what unfolded in Alabama on the campaign trail. That's next. Stay with us.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
Subscribe to the Ed Schultz podcast today. Simply log on to iTunes, search for Ed Schultz, and click the subscribe button to have the show delivered to your preferred listening device daily, free of charge. Rate and review the podcast and tell us how we're doing. More details at wegoted.com.
Well, the campaign trail is very interesting. If you're against certain portions of the population, what it certainly seems Donald Trump is, the leading Republican had quite a weekend down in Alabama. On Saturday, there was a Black Lives Matter protester who was, quote, roughed up and who was taken out of an event. A video posted online showed people kicking and pushing a man who was later identified as a Black Lives Matter protester at Trump's rally on Saturday in Alabama. This is Trump's version.
That the man that was I don't know, you say roughed up, he was so obnoxious and so loud, he was screaming. I had 10,000 people in the room yesterday, 10,000 people, and this guy started screaming by himself, and they did, I don't know, rough up? Maybe he should have been roughed up, because it was absolutely disgusting what he was doing. This was not handled the way Bernie Sanders handled his problem, I will tell you. But I have a lot of fans, and they were not happy about it. And this was a very obnoxious guy who was a troublemaker who was looking to make trouble. But Donald Trump, I didn't get to see the event.
Okay, let's go to Dr. James Peterson. He is the director of Africana Studies at LeHigh University, with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Doctor, good to have you back with us.
Thanks, Ed. Thank you for having me.
All right, what do you make of this? Who's at fault? What happened in the response of the candidate?
Okay, well, so first, I mean, protests are going to happen at presidential candidates' rallies. This is a part of the American tradition. There's really nothing more American than sort of speaking your voice, sometimes in the minority. And so the idea that the Trump campaign couldn't handle this in a way or diffuse this in a way without letting his actual supporters have a physical interface with this protest doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, Ed, think of the high irony of Donald Trump's response referring to someone as being obnoxious. I mean, here you have a guy who's maybe one of the most obnoxious presidential candidates we've had in the history of the United States, referring to a protester as being obnoxious. So I wish they could have diffused, the Trump campaign could have diffused this without allowing that sort of physical interface between his supporters and this protester.
Dr. Peterson, what do you make of the comment should have been roughed up?
Inappropriate, Ed. It's inappropriate. But again, like, this is a candidate who defies all sort of everything we know about the sort of etiquette for presidential candidates, which is to say that if I don't know if any other candidate in the past said that a protester at one of their events should be roughed up, they essentially would be cast out from the presidential campaign. This guy's poll numbers go up when he says stuff like this. And so it's counterintuitive how you sort of comment on the Donald Trump candidacy, because he sort of defied the odds and defied history in so many ways over the last 6 months.
Do events like this and scenarios that unfolded at this event on Saturday in Alabama, does this tarnish the effort of Black Lives Matter in any way?
No way. I certainly don't want to see any violence, but I suspect that Donald Trump will see more Black Lives Matter protesters at his events going forward.
Okay. Is this turning off an entire generation to the Republican effort in this country?
Ed, you know this already. An entire generation is already turned off to the Republican effort. Remember, there are young people who like Trump because they like his irreverence, and they like this idea that there's some outsider who can come into Washington and revolutionize how government gets done in the U.S. But I don't think people associate Trump with the traditional Republican Party brand. I think there's a disconnect, and I think folks in the RNC know this. Folks like Blanche Priebus and other folks in the leadership of the RNC are well aware of the fact that there is a disconnect between Trump's supporters and folk who love and follow Trump and the Republican brand. And so the Republican Party last presidential election allegedly was trying to sort of recuperate itself and revive itself by reaching out to young people, by reaching out to people of color. Clearly, once the presidential cycle came around, it was clear they were not invested in doing that. And so they're going to have to sort of pay the consequences of it. Unfortunately, we have a system that is gerrymandered, that's overwrought with money, and set up in such a way that a minority party can still hold on to power, even in times where they don't have popular vote and popular support.
Well, the national election is not going to be gerrymandered, and right. How hard is it going to be? Well, let me phrase it this way: what do the Republicans expect to be the end result to get people of color in this country to see their vision for the future when things like this happen? I mean, it's very clear that the Black Lives Matter movement in this country has been discarded by the mainstream media. They've taken a tremendous amount of criticism. There is no respect, or there's no listening to the message at all from what I hear. So where's the gain here for the Republicans if they're trying to make sure minorities in this country have a better America ahead and a better future ahead? Where's the gain here?
So far, that's only been lip service, Ed. I mean, we have to wait until this presidential cycle moves into the general election, because these guys on the right and the Republican candidates are all playing to a base that actually, we call it the red meat base because they love the red meat of somebody throwing out or beating up some black guy at a Donald Trump campaign event. I know that sounds horrible to a lot of your listeners, but there are some folks who are probably applauding that. There are some folks who feel like Black Lives Matter is a movement that's antithetical to the principles of America, and that black folk need to sit down and be quiet somewhere. And so Trump's response is playing to the sort of primary base where we see Republican politics outside of the sort of scope of mainstream America. We have to see what these folks are talking about once the general election piece starts. I would imagine they're going to be doing a little bit of damage control, trying to recover a little bit from some of the furthest of their right-wing sort of pendulum swing during the Republican primary process. But I don't know if there's any gain for the Republicans to be had out of this presidential cycle. I mean, the damage to me seems to be pretty much done at this point.
Dr. James Peterson, Director of Africana Studies, LeHigh University. Good to have you with us, James. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ed.
You bet. This is Ed Schultz, News and Commentary. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team bring you this production. We're back tomorrow.